There may come a time where the parent component is loading data for its nested child. However, you need access to a particular parameter on the URL. In our case, we have a profile path, but if you look here with a profile/1, that will still match our app. However, when we go and look in our profile at profile/1 and look at our params, we can see that the profile ID is empty. The reason is because it is only matching the path here, and it is no longer, it's not looking, and we're not indicating to look for a profile ID here. So to do that, we're going to make this work and to match the profile ID so we can load data, we're going to first import matchPath from React Router DOM. The piece of the match that we care about is the parameters. So we're going to create a function called const getParams, and it's going to receive a path name. And that path name is going to be the active current path. We're then going to say const match profile is equal to match path. And the match path function takes a path name, for example, profile/1, and then a series of props in an object. And these props that we're passing in, this object, is the exact same props that we have here. So in our case, we want to match the profile/profile ID. So say path profile/profile ID. So this will match the path name against this path. And it will then return this .prop_set_match that you would usually get as a prop in a React component. So here we can then return match profile and match profile.params. And we'll wrap this here. So it'll return the params if the match profile exists, or we'll just return an empty object. And the reason we need to do this is because matchProfile.params may not exist if we're matching /profile, because this won't actually match the path of /profile. It'll only match the path if it has a ID here. So this will actually be undefined. So now that we have a function that will return the parameters, we're going to use component_did_update. Now the reason we have to use component_did_update is because this component will still be rendered when the profile route changes from either 1 or 2 or back to /profile. So now with component_did_update, we get access to the current and previous location. And so we're going to destructure path name from this.props.location, as well as get our path name, but call it previous path name from previous props.location. So now that we have our two path names, we can pass them into our getParams to get the parameters for that particular path. So say const current params equals getParams for our path name, and then we'll get the previous params, which will pass in our params for the previous path name. So here we can then compare the profile ID if it exists, and then also if it has changed. So we're going to say if the current params.profile ID exists, because it might not if we're at the /profile route, and then we'll say current params.profile ID doesn't equal the previous params.profile ID, then we can load our data. In our case, we just have a loading flag. So we're going to say this.setState loading true. However, we also need to then cause a fake delay. So we'll just do a set timeout. Say this.setState loading false. And we'll just add a delay to our set timeout of 500. Now, just to make sure that everything is kosher, we're going to say this.timeout equals set timeout. We'll do a clear timeout, this.timeout. And then in our component we'll unmount, we'll say clear timeout, this.timeout. And that way, if this component is ever unmounted within our application, our timeout is cleared. However, this is just an example, so this clearing of timeouts is a bit trivial, but will clean up any potential memory leaks. So now we have our comparison of previous profile IDs. And we come back here and go home. You would see that we have a select profile screen, and when we click on profile 1, it'll say loading and then switch back. Profile 2 and then switch back. And we can see that here because we're passing in our loading flag. So this way, our parent component, which doesn't generally get access to the profile ID, is matching against the profile ID, comparing if it's changed, and then triggering a data load, which we can then pass down to our nested component.